You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Let's move on and talk about Group B and talk about Group B's teams in this Champions Trophy, talk about their chances of winning this Champions Trophy. So Group B has Australia, England, South Africa, and Afghanistan. We'll start with Australia and talk about their chances in this Champions Trophy. The captain is Steve Smith for this Champions Trophy, replacing Pat Cummins, who's been ruled out because of injury. Australia have won two ICC Champions Trophies back in 2006 and 2009. Those tournaments were back-to-back. So Australia is one of the teams, I think they're the only team really to win back-to-back Champions Trophies in the history of the Champions Trophy. And in the 2017 Champions Trophy in England, they finished in the group stage. It wasn't a great tournament for Australia that year in 2017. The squad that Australia have selected is as follows: Smith, Carey, Fraser-McGurk, Head, Inglis, Labuschagne, Short, Abbott, Hardy, Maxwell, Dwarshuis, Ellis, Johnson, Sanger, and Sampa. And that's the squad that Australia have selected for this Champions Trophy. Now, coming into this tournament, Australia have selected a squad that has been depleted because of many injuries and withdrawals and retirements. Pat Cummins is injured. Josh Hazlewood is injured. Mitchell Starc is not injured. He pulled out because of personal reasons, which are yet to be disclosed, but are private and should remain private. That's not for us to divulge and discuss those with Mitchell Starc. Let's hope everything's okay there. And obviously Marcus Stoinis was named in the squad, but retired from ODI cricket. And he retired before the tournament even started from his one-day career. So it's a pretty depleted squad for Australia. Not so much with the batting, but with the bowling. You've got Nathan Ellis, Spencer Johnson, Tanveer Sanger, who haven't played a lot of international cricket for Australia, especially one-day cricket. They've been quite limited in that experience. Going into the tournament, Australia lost 2-0 to Sri Lanka. They also had a bit of a tough series there in Sri Lanka recently in the lead-up to this tournament. They lost 2-0. It was a pretty underwhelming performance across the two games against Sri Lanka. But let's be honest, it was in Sri Lanka on those difficult pitches that turn, and the Sri Lankan spinners really dominated the Australian batters. So very different conditions from Sri Lanka to Pakistan, where pitches are going to be a lot flatter. Not much going to be for the spinners in terms of the spin and turn there. So different conditions from Sri Lanka to Pakistan. So let's take that with a grain of salt when Australia lost 2-0 there in Sri Lanka. But still, it wasn't good to lose 2-0. They also lost 2-1 to Pakistan in that ODI series in the home summer before the test series against India. So they haven't really performed well of late in one-day cricket, Australia. The last series they won in one-day cricket was back in September of last year, where they played England in a 5-game series, and they won that series 3-2 in the end. So that's the last series they've won in one-day cricket. But yeah, expectations for Australia are always high in tournaments. Of course, people expect Australia to do well and win, but the expectations going into this tournament is quite different, given that, they're missing Cummins, Starc, and Hazlewood. I don't think Marcus Stoinis is a big loss. He didn't really do much in one-day cricket, if we're honest. The only one thing he did was that 100 he scored in Auckland in 2017, which was a very good game of cricket at the time. Nearly got Australia over the line, but Australia lost that game after Josh Hazlewood was run out by Kane Williamson, and Marcus Stoinis was not out in the end with a terrific 100. Apart from that, he's played a few innings. He scored some 50s and took wickets, but he didn't really do anything special, Marcus Stoinis. So I don't think he's a big loss. I don't think. But mainly Cummins, Starc, and Hazlewood are a big loss in terms of that experience with the bowling, especially Mitchell Starc, who has done quite well in ICC tournaments over the last few years. He's been the leading wicket taker for Australia in, a couple of World Cups in the past, and certainly in the last World Cup, he had a role to play as well when Australia won in 2023. So it will be tested, this Australian squad, not so much the batting, but the bowling. Obviously, Adam Zampa will have to stand up, being the senior bowler. He will have to stand up. Glenn Maxwell as well will have to stand up in terms of, bowling his off spin and providing that double-edged sword with his batting, but also his off spin. Both Adam Zampa and Glenn Maxwell are the leading wicket takers for Australia in this ODI squad in terms of the bowling. Both of them have got over many wickets in ODI cricket. Adam Zampa's got over 150 odd wickets in ODI cricket. Glenn Maxwell's got 70 wickets, I think, in ODI cricket. So they are the leading wicket takers for Australia in this bowling attack without Cummins, Stark and Hazlewood. But the bowlers that Australia have selected, Nathan Ellis, we know what he can do. He's a very good T20 bowler, but he can get the job done. Spencer Johnson can bowl quick, and he's got that left arm sort of feature like Mitchell Stark has. So he can bowl fast and quick, Spencer Johnson. He can definitely be effective with the left arm variation. Ben Dorshus has done well in the Big Bash. He's scored some runs with the bat and also taken some wickets. Tavia Sanger, early in his career, but he can provide a support role for Adam Zampa if Australia do decide to play two spinners. I don't think they will, but depends on conditions. If that's the case, he can provide some support there. Sean Abbott, he's been a bit expensive with the ball in one-day cricket of late, Sean Abbott. He's a comedy rate and bowling average has gone sky high. So he will need to rectify that in this tournament. Aaron Hardy, the all-rounder, early in his career as well. So he will need to stand up with both bat and ball. So the one thing that will be tested for Australia is definitely the bowling attack. Without Stark, Hazlewood and Cummins, they really got to stand up, got to take wickets, got to bowl well, keep it tight, bowl well at the death. So that will be tested. But with the batting side of things, you've got batters who are pretty good. You've got Steve Smith, who's in excellent form at the moment, following his recent run of form with hundreds in Test cricket against India and Sri Lanka. Alex Carey, he's batting well, just coming off a superb 100 against Sri Lanka in the second Test there. Travis Head, we know what Travis Head can do. Josh Inglis, we know what he can do in the limited over formats for Australia. Marnus Labuschagne's bit up and down, but he did play an important role for Australia in the 2023 World Cup, especially in the final with Travis Head in that partnership. Matt Short, Jake Fraser-McGurk have been disappointing, but a good opportunity for those two to really step up and, really get their act together, really. Both of them have been disappointing when playing one-day cricket for Australia. They've gotten out in poor dismissals, just not really taking the time or the effort to get in and get set. So they will need to stand up if they do get an opportunity in this Champions Trophy for Australia. And then you've got Glenn Maxwell, who can do Glenn Maxwell things. Look at what he did in the 2023 World Cup. That wonderful 200 against Afghanistan, out of this world. So Australia do have match winners there with the bat. It's just about doing the basics right. Building partnerships and getting in, getting set, going on to score big scores. So out of this squad, Australia do have experience in terms of tournament experience. You got Smith, Carey, Head, Inglis, Labuschagne, Maxwell, Zampa. They were a part of the winning World Cup squad in 2023 in India. So Australia do have experience when it comes to tournaments, obviously, in that regard. With the others, it's their first time playing an ICC tournament. For some of them, like Ben Dorshus, Spencer Johnson in particular, Nathan Ellis, Matt Short, Jake Fraser-McGurk, Hardy, they were a part of the T20 World Cup last year for Australia. So it's not their first time of an ICC tournament, but for some of the squad, it's their first time playing in a major tournament like this. So it's definitely a different Australian squad. It's an Australian squad that's sort of looking towards the future, if we're honest, because in another couple of years, maybe Hazlewood and Stark in particular, maybe Pat Cummins maybe still be playing ODI cricket in the years to come. But, with Hazlewood and Stark, they'll probably, step back from one-day cricket to prolong their Test careers. So it's a good opportunity for Ellis, Spencer Johnson, Dorshus, Sanger. Good opportunity for them to stand up and step up and make a name for themselves. So Australia have got what it takes. We know with Australia, when they've been weakened, people write them off. Let's go back to the 2023 World Cup. Going into that tournament, Australia were playing poorly in one-day cricket. They lost their ODI series against South Africa and India. Going into the tournament, they lost the first 2 games of the World Cup against India and South Africa, 2 of the teams that they lost ODI series to going into the tournament. But then they went on the winning streak, and then after that, they won all the games, and they played well in the semi-final and the final. They won the whole tournament. So with everyone saying Australia are rubbish and probably not going to do well in this Champions Trophy, I won't be surprised if they make it to the semi-finals or win the whole thing. So Australia have got that ability to do that. They've got match winners, who are capable of winning games for Australia off their own bat or ball. It's definitely going to be a challenge, but certainly a challenge that Australia will embrace. And you would think in their Group B, they've got England, South Africa, and Afghanistan. You would think the one tough game for Australia there could be, or maybe a couple of tough games, maybe against South Africa and Afghanistan. England, well, I think everyone can beat England in this Champions Trophy. They're not playing well at the moment. So Australia will fancy their chances of qualifying for the semis. If they qualify for the semi-finals, that's a good result. If you make it to a semi-final of a tournament, that's not bad. But if you win the whole tournament, that's even better. So Australia, with a depleted squad, they've got the ability to, perform well if they can really do it. But only time will tell. But we know with Australia, we can't write them off. Even if they have a weakened squad, it's Australia. They always fight. They always scrap. They always, fight until the end, and, they can get the job done. So definitely going to be a bit of a challenge for Australia, more so with the bowling because of no Cummins, Stark and Hazelwood. But the batting, no problems there. They do have some problems in terms of what happened in Sri Lanka and that, but that can be rectified. If they can get the batting right, which they can in terms of, playing the right tempo and doing the basics right, then that will take care of itself. It's just the bowling. So Ellis, Johnson, Dorshus, Adam Zampa's got to lead the way, being the senior bowler. Sanger, if he gets an opportunity. Sean Abbott's got to step up, and Aaron Hardy as well. If they can do that, they can take wickets and compete. So it'll be very interesting to see what Australia do. But mark my words, we can't write them off. Despite the challenges that they have, you never know what Australia are going to do. Even if they are weakened, they tend to play better. When they're under pressure, they tend to play better. When people write them off, they tend to play better because they want to prove a point. And for Australia, they like winning tournaments, and they're definitely going to give it their best shot. And we shall wait and see what happens with Australia in this Champions Trophy in terms of whether or not it was a success or a failure. Only time will tell. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on how Australia will go in this ICC Champions Trophy for 2025. We would love to hear what you have to say.